Welcome back to Sonic Speed Reading, and today we are covering the 5th and final issue of the DC X Sonic crossover. Or is it DC Cross Sonic? I mean, that does make more sense. That is kind of cute. Last we left off, heroes got spit into each other's dimensions, but now the entire gang is back together, and this gives us another chance for fun little moments of banter here and there. Love that little smirk on Batman looking at his latest bat protege. He has a bat dog, and now he has a bat hog. You love to see it. Amy Rose is now officially a part of the Themyscirian Amazonian Sisterhood, which is cute, but I don't know why Wonder Woman is flexing. Maybe she's trying to impress the pink hedgehog, I don't know. Also, I know this isn't news, but something I have never commented on, but have appreciated. I do love that Knuckles has the Rebirth super suit. Kind of wish the other Sonic costumes paid a little more homage, or is it homage, to the other suits, but it's not a big deal. Still fun to see them in Justice League gear one way or the other. While everyone chats, high above them, the Ragnarok is looking a little worse for wear. Kind of adorable that it's emoting at all here. And Tails and Cyborg team up to over-explain the plan to basically get all the Chaos Emeralds, beat up Darkseid, and set things back to normal. So they head off to do just that. And Darkseid is just sitting there, looking like an end boss in a Final Fantasy game. I know I've made that joke earlier, but they're really going in that direction with this set design, and that is not a bad thing. This is some Final Destination business, and I am here for it. I should clarify, I mean Final Destination as in the Smash stage, not the movie franchise. I kind of forgot that those were two separate things for a bit there. Anyway, yeah, Darkseid has been expecting them, mocking all the heroes, saying they could have just left him be, and he would have been trapped in this void for all eternity, not causing problems for nobody. But the heroes, predictably, couldn't leave well enough alone, and now he intends to take advantage of that fact. All while forming this giant golem of his likeness, saying he has spent countless ages learning to bend this hell to his will. So that also confirms time and space have been distorted inside the Ragnarok, which we expected, but probably not to the degree anybody realized. It's a good excuse to up Darkseid's abilities without really needing to explain anything in greater detail. He's a final boss, he can just do this stuff, it's fine. And Adam is having fun with all these designs. It's a real cool page. So the final battle kicks off, with the golem launching itself at the heroes as they begin to scatter around the void. Knuckles and Superman show off their power as they bust through the outreaching rocky hand. Wonder Woman and Amy go after the other, and we get Batman and Shadow teaming up to throw whatever little gadgets they have at Darkseid himself. It's not much, just party favors when it comes to someone like Darkseid, but it's Batman we're talking about here, who understands that even a few mere seconds can make all the difference in a fight where you're teamed up with Sonic and Flash. Also a subtle little lesson for Shadow himself, easily the most powerful character on the Sonic roster, who's been taking after the technically most physically limited character of the Justice League, which is kind of cool. While all of this is happening, Cyborg and Tails getting close to the engine with their collected 6 emeralds. Cyborg warns Tails to be careful as he's reading an energy output on par with the missing emerald coming from the engine. Tails asks how that's possible, seeing as Darkseid is holding said emerald, and Cyborg tells Tails something that you will be hearing a lot in this issue. Basically, don't worry about it, it's comic logic. What this means, for their science jargon, is that the engine and the emeralds can synchronize, but they still need that final emerald. John and Silver, oh my god, just realized saying those names out loud. Long John Silver, that's cute. I want some chicken planks. Anyway, they make an attempt to grab the emerald, but Darkseid conjures up his own constructs and slams the two heroes, but that leaves him open as Sonic and Flash zoom in and nab the final emerald. Unfortunately, there's a lot of empty space between the speedsters and the robo-nerds. And don't you worry, picky Sonic fans, Ian does mention Chaos Control, which does confirm that Sonic has been using it, but thinks it's too risky to use here. I have no idea why, but that does give us the excuse to do what they do next. To make up for the lack of ground, the speedsters decide to make their own ground by running on each other's feet, completely synchronizing their running. How does it work? Comic logic, don't worry about it. Space and time are wonky, which means we're allowed to have some wild moments like this, and I absolutely love it. If you thought thought Sonic running on a handful of sand was crazy? Well, it is, and it's ridiculous, and somehow this makes more sense. That's just a sign of a good writer, but I'm here for it. This is awesome. And considering the publishing history of Flash, I doubt this is even in the top 10 silliest things this character has done. Anyway, the idea works, and that gets Sonic to the rest of the Emeralds, but Darkseid shoots off another set of Omega Beams that make contact with Sonic right as he makes contact with the rest of the Emeralds, which means, of course, he's transformed into Super Sonic. I suppose that gives the writers a good enough excuse to get rid of the Flash costume. I'm sure the Omega Beams burned that off so we could get the full glory of Sonic's golden goodness, but I kind of wish they could have done like a Flash Sonic Super Feud. Whatever, doesn't matter. It's cool to see Super Sonic. And hey, at the very least, Sonic calls Darkseid backside, just like he used to call Robotnik. It's as close as he ever gets to calling a bad guy an ass. I love it. And I love the quick little fight between Super Sonic and Darkseid. Now, just like everything else in this comic, they're never gonna flat out admit who's stronger or who's faster, but there are little hints to the upper levels of power capable of these two characters. Sonic admits the Omega Beam stung, but then rocks Darkseid with a super Sonic spin, which is rad, but Darkseid immediately recovers and grabs Super Sonic by the head, and then headbutts the hog, which is crazy. Obviously, if Omega Beams weren't gonna kill Super Sonic, a headbutt wasn't going to do him in either, but I love the facial expressions here, which tell you a deeper story than whatever trash talk is being thrown between these two. Darkseid clearly felt that attack, but being able to grab Super Sonic immediately after an attack is no small feat, and Sonic clearly was not expecting it. And he definitely felt that headbutt. Look how he winces in pain. You can even see a mark on his golden quills, which is not something you see often in this form. He's technically supposed to be invincible. Just goes to show how powerful of a villain Darkseid truly is. Super Sonic's presence isn't enough to end this battle, which is not the norm for the Hedgehog. And again, they're not flat out saying it, but I do think they are still inferring that Super Sonic is about at Superman's level, just with visual language. We see the two characters floating together every now and then. We see Superman take on Omega Beams a couple times here in this crossover. Again, they're never going to tell you who's stronger, no matter what the comments tell you or what they argue. There's no official answer. But regardless, it's still really cool to see these two together. But even having Superman and Super Sonic fighting on the same side still isn't enough to take down Darkseid. And while all of this is happening, they still have the problem of setting everything back to normal, which is a problem without the Emeralds. Sonic left that doohickey supercharge, but they still need a catalyst to set everything in motion. But that gives us a good excuse to finally make use of the Speed Force. Now, it's been a minute since I've caught up with Speed Force lore. I know they've been expanding on it in recent years, but I do remember back in the Marvel DC crossover from years ago, the Speed Force didn't exist in the Marvel universe, and therefore Flash could not utilize his speedy abilities. Now, Flash has been zipping all over the place here in Sonic's universe, which means he can tap into it from here. And this comic does go out of its way to mention that it's one of the 7 fundamental forces of the universe, which lines up quite nicely with 7 Emeralds. And as far as this is concerned, the Speed Force is multiversal. Just saying, there might be some fun ideas worth playing around with if we had the time, but we don't. Anyway, yeah, Flash uses the Speed Force to help kickstart the thingamajig while the heroes buy some time by hitting Darkseid with hammers and bat explosives. I love that little Shadow logo. That means that Shadow had Alfred or Lucius Fox or somebody produce his own trademark gadgets, and he brought it back to his universe. That's adorable. And while I would have liked to see more of these two, we do get a quick team up between Superman and Super Sonic as Superman shields Sonic from another blast of Omega Beams as the Hog goes in for another spin attack. The heroes are throwing everything at Darkseid, and all they really managed to show for it is a scratch over his left eye. DS is good and pissed and decides to just end it all as hands begin to form out of the darkness. As Wonder Woman explains, Darkseid is collapsing all of reality around them. I mean, he did say he had countless ages to master this space, so why not? It's Darkseid. We need to up the ante for the climax. But don't you worry, as I just mentioned, Flash uses the Speed Force to activate the thingamajig as Sonic lets off one more snarky comment as he and Superman look at the expanding orb of light. Both these characters looking unfazed, of course, because both are quite accustomed to universe resets. And that's exactly what happens. The two universes go back to normal, like even before everything went down. So the picnic is still set up, the chili dogs are still warm, and more importantly, the Master Emerald was never busted, but that thing breaks all the time, so it wouldn't have been that big of a deal. Long and short of it, everything is peachy keen. Amy does ask if that means all their heroic efforts in the DC universe are null and void, to which Sonic says, don't worry about it. But hey, at least all the heroes remember each other, and Sonic hopes someday he and Flash can have a proper race to see who is officially the fastest. Yeah, Sonic, that would have been fun, but hey, you only had 5 issues to do that. Of course, we end with a tease. Not everything has gone back to normal completely, as we see Dr. Ivo Eggman Robotnik having a chat with Lex Luthor, talking all villain-like about how reckless these so-called heroes are and how they should have been left in charge and all that fun stuff. So yeah, we end with Eggman figuring out how to make his way to the DC Universe and Metropolis, and a Death Egg Robo covered in the iconic armor of Lex Luthor. And let's just add that to the ever-expanding list of Robo Robotniks I missed in that one video. So there you have it, folks. That's the end of the DC Sonic crossover. And, well, it was a lot of fun, but it's about as cookie cutter as it gets when it comes to a comic crossover. Something which we are seeing a lot more of these days. So let's talk about that briefly before I get on to some more positive notes. If you're deeply involved with certain franchises, or maybe even comics in general, you are no stranger to crossovers, especially because certain brands just keep slapping stuff together. My all-time favorite franchise, the Ninja Turtles, have met up with everybody recently, except ironically for Sonic, and they're about to do a Godzilla crossover, and of course that big lizard has been showing up absolutely everywhere. The Justice League are gonna go fight him all over again soon. They advertise it within this issue. Speaking of the Justice League, they've been doing a lot of crossovers these past few years. So yeah, while this crossover did feel like a big deal, at least they were hyping it up to be, the idea of a crossover just doesn't hit the same as it used to. Even outside the realm of comics, crossovers have become so ridiculously frequent that fatigue has certainly set in for some folks. Unless you're really trying something interesting, or really taking advantage of having two brands together to create something really wild and going all in with the fan service, this can become quite stale. I mean, it's really cool to see a bunch of your favorite characters all together, but if that's all it is, well, you're just waiting around month for month for a very basic and bland story. What also doesn't help is a lot of these brands and characters are multiversal these days, especially DC Universe characters. That means you're not technically following the same characters you might be following in a different title. Whatever happens in the Sonic story is not going to affect anything happening in Superman's mainline comic, because that's technically two separate versions of Superman. And when it comes to crossovers, a lot of the time you're getting a generic version of that character with no lasting impact to their larger lore. Also, it doesn't help that comics just kind of feel like a dumping ground for this kind of stuff. You don't have to animate anything or hire voice actors, so you get a lot more crossovers in panels than you ever do on a screen. And as far as this particular crossover is concerned, I will say the one perk of having homogenized so much of the Sonic brand does mean that hardcore Sonic fans can at least feel satisfied knowing that the same hedgehog you follow in the games and the IDW comic is probably the same hedgehog that raced the Flash. And really, taking a step back and looking at this thing for what it is, that's all it really needed to be, and I for one am pretty okay with that. Even with the limitations or missed opportunities or not meeting your own particular expectations, I do think it's pretty clear that the comic team had a lot of passion when putting this together. I can see that in the writing and I can see that in the art, and overall it's a competent package. Yes, I would have really loved to see a Superman, and I really don't care if only certain hedgehogs can activate that form or utilize the Chaos Emeralds, whatever. Like they were saying, space and time didn't make sense anymore, and these kind of crossovers exist so they can go wild with that kind of nonsense. And while I did appreciate seeing Sonic and Flash quip or Batman teaming up with Shadow, I really do feel like we could have gone farther, but potentially both IP holders were a bit too conservative on what they allowed their characters to do or be. Now, I have seen DC characters get a little nuts in crossovers before, so if I had to bet money, I would assume that Sega put on a lot more limitations than the other way around. Again, I don't know, I'm just guessing. I could be completely off base there. Maybe this is all the creators wanted to do for right now, because we do know that the brand crossover will extend into next year. We're getting toys and all kinds of merch, so who knows? Maybe they'll go crazy in a sequel story, because as it is, they played things incredibly safe and really didn't let fun moments breathe in the way fans would want. I'd rather see more Joker and Reverse Flash than more of the Furies. I'm sorry, I know some some of you weren't happy when I brushed them off. Every character is somebody's favorite character, and I know some of you are more invested on the DC side of things. But I'm sorry, I think I'm speaking for a lot of other people here. They aren't the characters I really want to see interact when it comes to a big brand crossover like this. Call me basic, but fans will keep debating Reverse Flash versus Sonic or Batman versus Metal Sonic, but ain't nobody gonna go up to bat for Calabac versus Knuckles. I'm sorry, it's just not happening. I wanted to see more Sonic villains when the DC heroes were exploring Sonic's world. Instead, I got a weird German dude teaming up with the Deadly Six. We can do better. That said, it's Darkseid's crew. They make sense for the story. Ian Flynn got to flex some DC deep cuts, and yes, I will admit, it was kind of awesome having an excuse to say Vermin Wunderbar out loud in a video. But how do you not have Sonic meet the Joker? We have that one dude to thank for all of this, and they can't even make that happen. Come on, man. And yes, I am thinking that random panel attendee for this entire crossover. Overall, I like this story just fine. Like I said, I think the team who put this together did a solid job. The art is wild, Ian Flynn stayed true to the characters while juggling a lot of characters at once. It does exactly what you would expect a Sonic DC crossover to do. But end of the day, it's just fine. It was a crossover of all time. I think DC and Sega were kind of hoping that initial appeal of having these characters meet would stretch through all 5 issues, but that hype was only going to last through the first issue. It gets less and less exciting month by month waiting for every new chapter of this story. Because even though this is fine, we still don't get certain crossover tropes that are overused, but are overused for a reason. Like, there's no clash between all the heroes, like some misunderstanding that causes a fight. I mean, I understand why Superman would have ended the entire fight immediately, but I would have liked to see Batman earn Shadow's respect by besting him in a fight, even though that technically shouldn't happen considering all Shadow's powers. I will say, how he earned Shadow's respect is still very commendable for what it is. Batman was the only superhero to not treat the rest of the cast like they were a bunch of little kid teddy bears, but that interaction stands out because that's about as deep as it ever gets for anybody. The superheroes are treated as larger-than-life icons because yes, they technically are that, but my point is this is all very surface level, which again is fine because they're going to try to sell toys to kids, but I also don't understand why this was rated for teenagers or above. I mean, they said a couple of swear words that are still pretty tame, so I'm not really sure why they went for that age range at all. All that said, it was still really cool. We officially have these characters meet up, and honestly, it did work in a lot of ways I wasn't expecting it to, and by the end of it, while I am a little unsatisfied, that just means it leaves me wanting more, which I guess isn't the worst thing in the world. If I hated it, I would want nothing to do with any of these issues. I would throw it away and let that be that. But while it's lacking, it does leave me wishing for a sequel story, and again, considering that this crossover is going to be extending into 2026, I'm hoping that's exactly what happens. Because yeah, there's just way too many characters all at once and didn't give anything enough time to breathe, and at the same time, didn't do anything wild like letting Superman have a super transformation just for the sake of it. Honestly, the biggest moments are between Sonic and Flash, and technically that's where it should have been, but if that's the case, I really wish they would have just left this be a crossover between the Sonic franchise and the Flash franchise. Shadow and Batman are cool, don't get me wrong, but I'm not really super concerned about Amy Rose meeting Wonder Woman or Silver meeting the Green Lantern. That's all fine. I would build up to that and really explore Flash and Sonic. We don't even technically have it confirmed that Barry Allen is the one under the mask. I believe it's Barry. Would have preferred Wally playing off of Sonic, or really explore what Sonic might mean to Barry, because I imagine that Sonic reminds him of Wally a whole lot. Like, there's just a lot you can explore in that realm. How does Sonic interact with the Speed Force? How does the Flash interact with the Chaos Emeralds? There's a lot to play with in just those two characters. And again, would have loved to have seen more Batman and Shadow and all that stuff. They're a great pairing, but also how cool would it have been to have Reverse Flash team up with Metal Sonic, or race Shadow, or have Shadow race Death? But there's a lot you can do. There's a whole lot you can do. Instead, we got the bare minimum, which is fine, but I know these creators, and I know they're just itching to go crazy with all this stuff, and I'd love to see what they could cook up, so I hope they do. As it stands, this is a decent enough start to something bigger, but if that never happens, it's an inoffensive standalone story that gives us some cool standout moments. So yeah, there you go. If you would like to see me play around with some fun ideas like where I would take Flash meeting Sonic, or what I would have done this or that or the other. We can always play with what ifs or what we hope to see in the future. Let me know. In the meantime, I'm gonna get us caught up with the IDW Sonic stuff soon. I do really have to jump back to Archie. I promise eventually I will cover Fleetway stuff as well. And all that stuff aside, I really miss talking about video games, so we'll get caught up with the Sonic games finally, and maybe throw in some other things here and there. I don't know. Don't want to overpromise things, just want to get back on track because we got a lot of fun things to do on this channel. So if you haven't already, be sure you subscribe, bell, all that stuff. And an extra special thank you to the folks who are keeping me alive. I know it's been a while since I put out a video. Cyrus the Skeptic, David 20 Covers. Oh man, Josh, yeah, I'm gonna message you back soon. I've not figured out why your name's not showing up anymore, but I'll figure that out. Anyway, Singer J199, Tiny Jericho, Cecil the Glade, Josh Strider, The Bad Pal, and Mr. SP, Stefan Plakanica, Jack of All Spades, Meekers, Bo Bennings, Graham J. Hall, Ginger Bob, Fish Flop, Sam Webster, Miles the Prower, Lucas Lipker, Tristan Trapp, Lenny X, 3 Monic, Wayne is Boss, The Dark Neon, Trey Nobles, Trash Baphomet, Interjack 5, Twilord, Jonathan Dobbs, Then 101. I'm just realizing these are not in the normal order they are, but whatever, we're gonna roll with it. Xerxes the Renegade Jin, quote, Resident Fanboy, Sindarin 7, Grayson Coniger, Crimson Rose, Roxas the Cat, Chad, Godzilla, Makuda of Salt, Alexander Watson, Neil Gampa, Conan Kudo, Daza S, Dwight Graham, The Lex, the most powerful ship in the 2 universes, Kaido Prower, Penn Adelaide, Spearmint, Silver the Lantern. Oh, that's clever. Oh, we're gonna get that new final issue soon. Oh, like tomorrow. I'm looking forward to that. Amu is not beating the Tails allegations, Gob, the RSI, just another evil robot clone seeking revenge. Did y'all see Metal Scott? How wild is that? Oh, I need to make a Metal Nick. Absolutely need to make a Metal Nick. Salem Hollow, Naburnyard, Siegfried Wilder, KB, Cho Henshin, one more Sonic robot, Charles the Green Dragon, Psychic Clips, My Great Rolls, Meow, Meowsh, David Slayer 05, Gideon Wells, Nyanza Devil 115. Should have said and there. Usually I have to end with an and. Thanks, Devil. I can always rely on the devil. All right, guys, thank you so much for hanging out with me. And hey, if you're gonna be at Sonic Expo, that's gonna be happening next month in Atlanta, Georgia. Yeah, Atlanta, Georgia. I really should figure out the details, but anyway, I will be there. So if you want to come and hang out, I'd love to meet you. And for Patreon supporters, I'm gonna be reconfiguring some of the perks because I don't really utilize the voting a whole lot, so we're gonna figure out something a little bit more fun. But yeah, you'll see all that soon enough. But until then, thank you so much for supporting the channel. Thank you so much for watching the video, and I will catch you guys later.